"You don't look like the type we usually serve," the manager said, her tone soaked in judgment. The woman smiled softly. "That's because the people you usually serve don't fire you." Elise Monroe stood outside the Fremont National Bank. For a moment, staring up at the tall glass building that bore her company's name in small print beneath the logo. No one knew she was the new owner, not the staff inside, not the customers going in and out, and definitely not the ones who would decide her fate today. Her breath fogged in the early morning air. She looked down at herself. Jeans she had purposely washed to look worn out, a dull gray coat missing a button, a tattered leather purse she hadn't used since her struggling days a decade ago. She looked like she had nothing. And that was the point. Elise wasn't here to be treated like a CEO. She was here to be treated like anyone else who walked in with worry in their heart and bills in their pocket. She pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The lobby smelled of lemon-scented floor polish and artificial cheer. Soft jazz played in the background, and the walls were lined with marketing posters, showing smiling families and sunny retirement dreams. But behind the counters, the smiles were forced, eyes dull with routine, and the tone reeked of indifference. Elise stood in the middle of the lobby for a full minute before anyone even acknowledged her. A woman at the front desk finally looked up, barely inside. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice devoid of warmth. "I'd like to speak with someone about opening a savings account," Elise replied gently. The woman gave her a once-over, her eyes narrowing as they scanned Elise's clothes. "You can use the kiosk," she said, pointing with her pen, "and take a seat. There's a wait." Elise looked over at the kiosk, a digital screen with options and a card scanner. Not exactly friendly for someone unfamiliar with technology. But she nodded, walked over, and tapped her way through the slow interface. A number printed, B26. She sat down. Across from her, a mother with 2 kids fidgeted with paperwork while her toddler spilled a juice box. No one helped. An elderly man with a cane stood in line ignored. No one offered him a seat. One teller was laughing at something on her phone. Another whispered to her colleague, while glancing toward the elderly man. Elise's heart ached. She remembered when she used to be one of them, ignored, struggling unseen. It wasn't just the service that stung. It was the cold, practiced disregard. 30 minutes passed. Finally, a name was called, not hers. Then another. Then silence. Elise walked back up to the front desk. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I've been waiting a while. Is there someone who could?" The receptionist cut her off. "Ma'am, we're very busy. You'll need to wait your turn, like everyone else." "I understand," Elise said, trying to stay calm. "But people who came after me are being seen first." The woman's lips curled slightly. "Look, you're probably not eligible for most of our services. Anyway, we have minimum deposit requirements. You may want to try a community credit union instead." That hit hard. Elise blinked. "Thank you," she said, voice low. "I'll wait." Back at her seat, she sat still. Her fingers tightened around her purse. Her eyes stayed calm, but inside, something old and fierce stirred. Not anger, not revenge. Just the heavy realization that her instincts were right. This branch wasn't broken. It was poisoned. By the time her number was finally called, Elise had been sitting for nearly 50 minutes. She approached the desk of a man in a navy suit with slicked back hair. His name tag read, Patrick, branch manager. "Good morning," he said, barely making eye contact. "I'm here to open a savings account," Elise said simply. Patrick sighed. "Do you have a current account with us?" "No." "Do you have a valid photo ID, proof of address, employment history, and minimum balance of $5,000? Elise pulled out a perfectly valid ID and a printed utility bill. "I can deposit more than that today." Patrick barely glanced at them. "These look outdated. We've had people try to fake documents before. I'm going to need you to come back when you're better prepared." "But these are real," Elise began. He raised a hand. "Ma'am, I don't have time for stories today. Please don't make a scene." Elise stared at him. The moment stretched between them like a held breath. Then she smiled. "Just slightly okay," she said quietly. "I understand." She walked out calmly, slowly, without another word, but the storm had already begun. Elise sat in silence as her driver navigated the city traffic. She stared out the window, her reflection faintly staring back. She didn't see a CEO. She saw the woman she used to be, a waitress working double shifts, saving every penny, ignored, dismissed, humiliated by people in suits. That pain never fully left. Maybe it never should, ma'am. Her assistant Carla's voice crackled through the car's Bluetooth system. We've got the footage. All cameras active, audio set to play. Elise said. A soft click, then voices filled the space around her. Did you see her shoes? Came the receptionist's voice. Probably got them at a thrift store. Another laugh, and that coat. God, smells like she rolled in a Goodwill bin. Then came Patrick, the branch manager. I don't know why people like that even come. In here, we're a national bank, not some charity office. Laughter followed. Elise leaned back in her seat. Her hand trembled slightly, but her face was calm. She didn't blink, didn't speak. She just listened. Then came a voice she hadn't expected. Hey, come on, maybe she's just having a bad day. We don't know her story. It was a young teller Luis, based on the personnel file Carla had shown her last week. Save it. Luis, you'll learn soon enough. People like that always want something for nothing. The line went dead silent. Elise. Carla asked quietly, You okay? She nodded slowly. Save everything. Full transcripts. And flag Luis. He's the only decent one in that place. Yes, ma'am. They were back at Monroe Financial HQ within the hour. Elise walked directly into the executive conference room, still wearing the old coat and scuffed shoes. The board was already waiting. No one said a word when she walked in, but several raised eyebrows. Without speaking, Elise opened her bag, pulled out a tablet, and connected it to the projector. Watch, she said. And they did 10 minutes of footage. Snide remarks, mockery, passive aggression toward an elderly man. A black veteran turned away with a lie about technical issues. A Spanish-speaking woman left to struggle alone while a teller mocked her. Accent. Then Elise. Dismissed, undermined, degraded. When the video ended, she stood quietly looking over the room. This is Fremont branch number 47, she said, her voice low but razor sharp. As of 3 months ago, it's part of Monroe Holdings, which makes it our responsibility. A heavy silence followed. I went in undercover because I received complaints, but what I found wasn't poor service. It was institutionalized disrespect. It was classism, racism, laziness, arrogance, all hiding behind a smile and a company. Name or legal advisor cleared his throat. Elise, if you want to pursue this, we'll need a formal audit, termination procedures. HR investigations, it's already done, she interrupted. Carla, show them. The screen changed. Complaint logs. Over 70 cases filed against Fremont number 47 in the last 18 months. Most marked closed due to insufficient evidence. Several never investigated. Someone at Regional was sweeping this under the rug, Elise said. I want that name tonight. Carla nodded. Double quotes tomorrow morning, Elise continued. I'm going back there, not in a coat, not with a hidden mic. I'm going back as myself, and they're going to see who they denied. One executive hesitated. That could create headlines. Media might spin it. I hope they do, Elise snapped. Because I want people to know that this company doesn't tolerate snakes under our roof. We're not just here to handle money. We're here to serve people. There it was again, that silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was respect. Elise left the boardroom and headed straight to her office. She stood by the window overlooking the city, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about one bad branch. This was personal, because she'd once been that woman sitting in the lobby, and no one had stood up for her back then. But now, she could stand up for everyone like her. Tomorrow, they'd see exactly who she was. At exactly 9:55 a.m., a black SUV pulled up to Fremont National Bank's front entrance. The security guard at the door instinctively stepped forward, squinting at the tinted windows. The car idled silently for a moment before the back door opened. Out stepped a woman, poised, confident, dressed in a deep blue designer suit, her hair perfectly tied back, heels clicking against the pavement. She looked every bit like the woman from a Forbes cover, and she was Elise Monroe. The same woman they mocked just a day earlier in her old gray coat and scuffed shoes. The same woman they brushed off as invisible. She wasn't invisible anymore. Behind her, 3 staffers from Monroe Financial Headquarters stepped out. Legal, HR, and PR. 2 security guards flanked them. A local camera crew, tipped off anonymously just an hour earlier, stood by with lenses trained on the entrance. Elise didn't pause. She walked straight into the bank. The receptionist Chelsea froze mid-sentence, her greeting to another customer stuck in her throat. Her eyes widened, her face drained of color. She'd seen Elise before, just not like this. Patrick, the branch manager, was behind the glass door of his office, sipping coffee and checking his watch. He noticed the commotion and stepped out, his expression annoyed, then confused, then tight with recognition. He blinked once, twice. Elise Monroe, he stammered. Elise smiled but not warmly. Mr. Patrick Lewis, I presume. The lobby had gone completely silent. All eyes were on her. You're a Trier? He said, his words fumbling. I didn't know you were coming. I wasn't informed, that's the point, she said coolly. I wasn't interested in a performance. I came for the truth, and I found it. Chelsea dropped her clipboard. Her hands shook as she backed away from the desk. Is there somewhere we can talk? Patrick asked, trying to recover. His voice shook. Elise turned to her legal advisor. No. Everything will be said right here. In front of the staff. In front of the customers. Patrick's mouth opened, but no words came out. Elise turned, addressing the room. Yesterday, she began, her voice steady and commanding. I walked into this bank wearing a worn coat and carrying an old purse. I asked for help opening a savings account. I was denied service, mocked, humiliated, because I didn't look like I had money. The customers in the lobby stood still, watching, holding their breaths. You didn't know who I was, and that's fine. You shouldn't have to, because every single person who walks into this building, no matter how they look, respect, compassion, service. But that's not what I got. That's not what anyone here got. She turned to Patrick. You didn't just insult a woman, you insulted this entire company. You insulted our values. And you made it clear that this branch is operating on prejudice and pride instead of professionalism. Patrick raised his hands. Miss Monroe, I apologize. I didn't mean, she cut him off. You meant every word. You just didn't mean for me to hear it. She turned to Carla, who was holding a tablet. With a swipe, she activated the connected speaker. The audio recording from the previous day began to play loud and sharp. Did you see her shoes? She probably got them at a thrift store. Smells like she rolled in a Goodwill bin. She's not the type we want here. Every word echoed through the lobby. Chelsea collapsed into her chair, her head in her hands. Patrick's face turned beet red. Customers gasped. Some shook their heads. One elderly man leaned forward and whispered to another. That's what they said too. Me last week too. Elise let the audio play for another minute. Then she nodded to Carla, who stopped it. Elise, please, Patrick pleaded. This isn't who we are. We've just had a lot of pressure staffing cuts. Morale issues. I admit there have been lapses. There haven't been lapses. Elise snapped. There's been a culture of cruelty. She turned to her HR advisor. You have the list. He nodded, opened a folder, and began reading names. Chelsea Ramirez, reception. You are hereby terminated effective immediately for violation of our employee code of conduct and discriminatory behavior. Chelsea gasped, tears springing to her eyes. Please. I didn't know she was, that's the problem. Elise said coldly. You only respect power, not people. Patrick stepped forward. You can't just walk in here and fire my staff. You're right, Elise said. I'm not just firing your staff. I'm firing you, Patrick Lewis. Effective immediately. His jaw dropped. This is outrageous. No, Elise said, walking up to him. Outrageous is watching an old man struggle in your lobby, while your staff laughs. Outrageous is ignoring over 70 formal complaints. Outrageous is managing a team that treats the poor like garbage, and the vulnerable like pests. You don't have proof, Patrick hissed, grasping for anything. Elise's eyes narrowed. I have more proof than you'll ever know. Interaction you had yesterday was recorded. Every word, every action. And it wasn't just me you mistreated. It was nearly every customer who didn't walk in here looking rich. Patrick's eyes darted to the cameras now openly filming the confrontation. He turned pale. Security, Elise said, motioning to her guards. Please escort Mr. Lewis off the property. The guards approached. Patrick took a step back. You're going to regret this. You'll make enemies doing things like this in public. Elise raised an eyebrow. Good. That means I'm finally doing something right. Patrick was escorted out. Chelsea followed, still sobbing. Elise turned to the remaining staff. Some stood frozen. One tried to avoid eye contact. Only Louise, the young teller, stood tall, looking her in the eye not with fear, but with dignity. She walked over to him. You spoke up, she said. When no one else did, he nodded. I tried. I didn't know who you were. I just thought it wasn't right. You're getting promoted, Elise said. Effective today, you're the interim branch manager, with full authority until we rebuild this place the right way. His eyes widened. Are you serious? She smiled. Dead serious. He swallowed hard, overwhelmed. Elise then turned back to the room. To the customers who've been ignored, dismissed, or mistreated, here I am deeply sorry. This place bears my name now. And I promise you, from this moment on, it will live up to it. A few customers began to clap. Then more joined. Applause filled the lobby. The camera crew caught it all. As Elise walked out, the sun caught her blazer. Just right. She paused, looking back through the glass. The place that had once dismissed her. The place she now controlled. Carla leaned in beside her. It's already trending. Elise smiled faintly. Let it tomorrow, the world would. No, never underestimate the woman in worn shoes, especially when she owns the whole damn building. The video hit 20 million views in less than 12 hours. It spread like wildfire across the internet. Undercover CEO exposes toxic bank staff in viral showdown. Clips of Elise Monroe calmly announcing terminations in the lobby of Fremont. National Bank flooded every platform. Twitter threads, YouTube breakdowns, TikTok edits. Elise's name was suddenly on everyone's lips, not just as a billionaire, but as a warrior for dignity and customer service. News anchors called it the corporate reckoning we didn't know we needed. Social media dubbed it the Monroe moment. Hashtags like hashtag Elise Monroe Justice, hashtag Respect is Basic, and hashtag CEO with Heart trended globally. But behind the scenes, the storm was just beginning. By morning, Elise had 4 major news networks requesting interviews. Her office phone never stopped ringing. PR teams scrambled to field emails, coordinate statements, and prepare for backlash. She stood by her office window at sunrise, coffee untouched in her hand. It was too quiet. For a moment she closed her eyes. She thought of her father, a janitor, who was refused a loan because he looked unreliable. Her mother, who worked 2 jobs and still got treated like a nuisance every time she visited a bank. Elise had once promised herself that if she ever had power, she'd use it to make sure no one like her parents was ever dismissed again. Now, that promise was echoing back to her louder than ever. Morning, Carla said softly, entering the room with a tablet. Here's the latest. Elise took the tablet. Headlines swam before her eyes. CEO walks into bank disguised as poor woman. Fires everyone in 10 minutes. A modern fairy tale or PR stunt. Elise Monroe's viral moment. Banking. Industry braces for internal audits after CEO's explosive visit. Here's the twist, Carla said, frowning. We're getting support publicly, but internally, not everyone's happy. Elise looked up. Go on. 3 regional managers called last night. They're concerned about morale. Think your move set a dangerous precedent. And we found out the compliance director had knowledge of several buried complaints about Fremont. He's spinning a defense now, claims he was unaware. Elise's fingers tightened around the tablet, and Patrick asked. Carla's lips pressed into a thin line. Leaked a statement, claimed he's a scapegoat. Says you humiliated staff, and that this was about optics, not justice. Elise laughed once. A sharp, humorless sound. Let him run his mouth. She turned back to the window. I want every regional branch reviewed, she said. Surprise. INSPECTIONs. Interviews with customers. Staff audits. We'll announce it publicly. Call it what it is, a cleansing. Carla hesitated. There will be resistance. I expect it. And the board, they'll get on board, or they'll get out. Silence stretched between them. You're changing the rules, Elise, Carla said carefully. Not just for us, for the whole industry. I'm not changing the rules, Elise replied. I'm finally enforcing them. At noon, Elise walked into a board meeting that was already buzzing with tension. Most of the faces around the table were white. Men over 50, polished, experienced, and guarded. Only a few women, and even fewer executives of color. This was an old room, and change didn't sit well here. Let's begin, she said, taking her seat at the head. We're in a media firestorm. One of them began immediately. Our brand equity is up, sure. But we've also seen backlash. There are unions raising concerns. Legal risk, employee trust is on edge. Trust breaks when you let poison sit, Elise said flatly. A woman near the end of the table to Mara head of ethics and risk cleared her throat. There's a deeper issue here. Fremont wasn't an isolated case. I've pulled early data. We have 6 branches with similar patterns. Complaint rates, low diversity, high turnover. Murmurs around the table. Elise nodded. That's why. We're launching a full internal audit. No more ignoring complaints. No more protecting managers who abuse authority. Another executive leaned forward. Elise, some are saying you embarrassed the company. That you turned a leadership problem into a public trial. You're right, she said. I did. Because leadership isn't about protecting our image, it's about protecting people. And if we're going to be a company that matters in 10 years, we need to burn the rot out now. No one argued. Not out loud. But Elise could feel it, the resistance curled behind polite smiles, and the measured tone of voices too careful, too rehearsed. Later that night she sat alone in her office, lights off, the city blinking quietly beyond. The glass dot, she thought of the look on Patrick's face when he realized who she was. She thought of the elderly man in the bank lobby, unseen, and she thought of the emails, hundreds of them, flooding her inbox, from single moms, from struggling immigrants, from veterans, from minimum wage workers, all saying the same thing, thank you. Some shared their own stories, some offered tears, a few begged for jobs, anywhere they wouldn't be judged for the way they looked. She forwarded everyone to HR, and then she sat back and whispered to herself, this is bigger than me now. She was right. The next morning, 3 more CEOs from rival banks released statements announcing internal audits of their own. Hashtag campaigns flooded LinkedIn. News anchors debated whether Elise Monroe was setting a standard or setting the bar too high. But Elise didn't care about optics, she cared about justice. She'd tasted invisibility once, she remembered its bitterness, and she swore she'd never let anyone choke on it again. For the first time in Monroe Financial's history, every branch in the country received a mandatory directive titled, Human First Always. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a new operational code. Elise stood at the headquarters podium, facing over 900 live-streamed employees. Her voice echoed across conference rooms, break rooms, and desktops nationwide. We failed, she began, eyes unwavering. Not just as a bank, as a system. We allowed entitlement to grow where empathy should have lived. We taught numbers, not people. Metrics, not moments. We cannot fix this with policies. We fix this with humanity. Behind her, the screen displayed images of real customers, an elderly woman gripping a walker, a father struggling with a language barrier, a single mother holding a paycheck with pride. These are the people we serve. And from this day on, if they aren't treated with dignity, respect, and care, you will not work here. The message was unmistakable, and for some, unbearable. Within 48 hours, over 200 resignations rolled in. Some were quiet. Others were loud, messy exits filled with dramatic emails and veiled threats. Elise read every single one. One regional director wrote, "This company is becoming too emotional. We're a bank, not a church." She forwarded it to HR with 2 words, "Accept immediately." A senior executive sent her a personal letter, suggesting her passion was admirable but naive, That people in poverty often invite poor treatment by their own choices. That one, she responded to directly. You're relieved of duty. Effective now. Dignity is not optional. There was no ceremony, no press release. But word spread, and the house cleaning began in the first week. Elise personally visited 4 branches. She didn't give speeches. She sat with tellers, asked them about their day, held the hand of a veteran who couldn't read the fine print, helped a nervous immigrant open his first savings account with a smile and a translator beside him. She listened like her life depended on it. Because in a way it did. This wasn't about PR anymore. It was about memory. She remembered being that woman once, the one afraid her debit card would decline in front of a crowd. She remembered standing in line as people pretended not to see her. She remembered humiliation like a second skin. That's why when a customer wrote to say, "Your branch manager in Houston made me feel human," Elise called the manager personally to thank her. That's also why, when a blind woman was left waiting at a branch in Arizona for over an hour because the staff didn't know what to do, Elise flew there herself the next day. She didn't announce it. She just walked in, sat down with the woman, and waited. With her then, she fired the branch manager and the 2 employees responsible on the spot. The ripples grew into waves. Investors raised eyebrows. Some murmured about Elise overstepping, about emotional governance. But others saw what she saw. The future customer satisfaction soared. New accounts jumped by 30% in 1 quarter. People started switching banks, not for better interest rates but for dignity still. Not everyone applauded. Patrick Lewis, the fired branch manager from Fremont, went on a media tour. He appeared on a fringe podcast, claiming Elise had a god complex, accused her of weaponizing shame and creating a witch hunt culture. He even wrote an op-ed, "She destroyed my life for a mistake. Everyone's replaceable, even CEOs." Elise didn't reply, but her silence wasn't weakness, it was focus. Because while Patrick whined to tabloids, Elise was building something new, a program, the Dignity Line, a direct, confidential complaint system that bypassed all middle management and routed straight to a central oversight team. Every voice mattered. Every pattern was tracked. Every abuser uncovered. In less than 3 months. The program led to 89 disciplinary actions, including several at the VP level. And still, she wasn't done. The board grew quiet, again respectful, but nervous. They watched Elise rise from figurehead to force of nature, and then came the final straw. At a private dinner, one board member made a joke about poor people being too sensitive these days. He was 72, wealthy, a donor, an old friend of Elise's late father. He laughed like it was harmless. Elise didn't. She stood up, laid her napkin down and said, "You're off the board, effective tonight." His mouth opened. She walked out. That night she sat at her desk until 3 a.m., rereading emails from staff across the country. Some praised her. Some begged her not to give up. Some came from former employees, saying they wished they had believed in her sooner. And one, from a woman in Atlanta, simply said, "You made me believe I mattered. I haven't felt that in years." Elise cried for the first time in weeks. Alone. Quietly, not out of sadness, but out of truth. She had cracked something open in herself, and now, she wasn't going back. It began with a whisperer, rumored too loud to ignore. They called it the Elise effect. Banks across the nation started implementing their own integrity audits. Executives scrambled to review training programs. HR departments that once silenced complaints began reopening files long thought buried. Even the Federal Financial Consumer Commission took notice. 3 months after the Fremont incident, they issued a new compliance guideline, Client Dignity and Equal Access Protocol. Internally, officials admitted Elise's actions had catalyzed the change. She didn't ask for that power, but she had it now, and she intended to use it. On a rainy Thursday morning, Elise sat in a small cafe in D.C., sipping black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug. No camera crew, no boardroom, no headlines. Just her. A laptop. A meeting invite that could change everything. Across from her sat Congressman Daniel Weiler, head of the House Subcommittee on Financial Ethics. "I never thought I'd say this to a billionaire," he said, "but you've got working-class America behind you." Elise smiled faintly. That's who I've been all along. They just forgot I was one of them. He leaned in. There's talk of a national code, a customer bill of rights. Real legislation. Your name's being floated to help draft it. She paused. A year ago, she would have laughed at the idea of working with Washington. Now, it didn't sound ridiculous. It sounded necessary. I'll help, she said, but only if it has teeth. This can't be another PR stunt for elections. Weiler nodded. With you on board, it won't be. And just like that, the line between businesswoman and reformer blurred. Back in New York, Monroe Financial was evolving. Branches began adopting a new model. Fewer glass walls, more open desks. Each location hired client advocates, a new role, dedicated solely to helping those often ignored, immigrants, the elderly, people with disabilities. They didn't ask about account minimums. They asked how they could help. Customer satisfaction numbers soared. But Elise didn't care about the metrics anymore. She cared about moments like the time an ex-con walked into a Monroe branch in Detroit and asked, timidly, if he could open an account. The teller, trained under the new policy, smiled and said, of course. Everyone deserves a fresh start. That story reached Elise's inbox. She forwarded it to the entire company with one sentence. This is who we are now. But legacy, like leadership, came with a price. One night, Elise sat in her penthouse, watching a documentary on greed in corporate America. Her name came up briefly next to words like revolutionary and controversial. She muted the TV and walked to the window. Rain traced the glass like veins of thought. She remembered her parents' faces, the exhaustion, the quiet dignity, the way they never asked for more than decency. They were gone now, but they were with her, etched in every decision she made. Behind her, the TV played muted footage of Fremont National Bank, of Chelsea, of Patrick. She didn't feel pride watching it. She felt purpose that night. She opened her personal email and replied to one she'd been avoiding. It was from Patrick. I lost everything, and maybe I deserved it. But if there's any way I can make it right, please tell me. Not for my job. For my daughter. She's ashamed of me. Elise stared at the message. She typed a response. We don't forget what you did. But redemption begins when you do the work quietly, not for recognition. Volunteer at a shelter. Help people who've been treated like you treated others. If I hear from one of them without you knowing, I'll know it's real. She hit send. She didn't forgive easily, but she believed in change, even for people like him. 3 months later, Elise gave a speech at a national ethics conference, not in a stadium, in a classroom at a small college. No teleprompter, no press dot. Students, you're not too small to matter, she said, pacing slowly. You're not too poor to be heard. And you're not too late to change the world you're walking into. One girl in the front row raised her hand. Do you think what you did actually changed anything? Elise looked at her. Not everything, she said. But I changed something for someone. And that's how it starts. The class clapped. But it wasn't for celebrity, it was for clarity. In her final months as CEO, Elise launched one last project, the Monroe Academy for Ethical Leadership. A mentorship and training initiative that didn't look for Ivy League graduates, it looked for resilience. For immigrants, for single moms, for janitors' kids, for people like her. The academy accepted its first 200 students. Quietly, no interviews, just letters of life experience. The first graduate, a young woman named Sasha, whose mother had once been denied a checking account because her address looked unstable. Sasha gave her graduation speech wearing a thrifted blazer and combat boots. We've been invisible long enough, she said. Thank you for making us matter, Elise cried. Publicly, unashamed, because that was the legacy. Not power, not profit, but presence. 6 months later, Elise stepped down as CEO, not with a scandal, not with a golden parachute, with a handwritten letter posted on the company's website. I built a company. Then I rebuilt it. Now it's time for others to take the wheel. But remember this. The customer you overlooked today might be the one who owns the building tomorrow. Treat them all like they matter, because they do. She signed it simply, Elise Monroe, daughter of janitors. CEO, human first, and just like That the woman in the worn coat walked away, but the world never forgot her footsteps. She walked in as someone they ignored and walked out as the name they'd never forget. If this story touched your soul, share it with someone who still believes in doing what's right. Drop a comment, and remember, change begins the moment someone dares to stand up.